you, Tom. So ADOPT is a trial in progress. We've been open over a year, and this is a collaborative study with the European Trials Group, ETOP. So it's an international multi-centre open-label randomised phase 3 trial to evaluate the benefit of adding adjuvant durvalumab after neoadjuvant chemotherapy plus durva in patients with resectable stage 2B to 3B non-small cell lung cancer. So a brief way of background, we know that neoadjuvant chemoimmunotherapy is a standard of care now for stage 2 and 3 resectable lung cancers. However, there are several phase 3 trials looking at a perioperative immunotherapy approach that haven't yet answered the question, who needs more post-operative immunotherapy? The phase 3 AEGEAN trial was the durvalumab version that looked at neoadjuvant chemo with durva and then post-operative durva for a year, but versus chemotherapy alone. This was a positive trial, as we've known for a long time. Event-free survival as the primary outcomes not yet reached versus 25.9 months in the chemotherapy alone arm. And what is consistent across trials is the pathological complete response is very significantly improved. So this led to durvalumab being approved across various jurisdictions and now has TGA approval, not Medicare reimbursement. In this circumstance, we don't have a Medicare reimbursed post-operative, perioperative immunotherapy approach in Australia. So what's really important is the ADOPT study, as far as we're aware, is the only trial that's looking at answering this question, who needs more post-operative immunotherapy? So our schema, as I mentioned, is looking at those that are stage 2B to 3B, so a slightly larger cancer than some of the other phase 3 industry studies, meaning that if you don't have node-positive disease, you need at least a T3 cancer 5 centimetres or above. You can have N2 disease, of course, if it's deemed to be anatomically resectable and obviously clinically operable, and all these patients need to be discussed in the MDT, as we know. Importantly, nodal sampling is required if there is PET-avid nodal disease, and if there's PET-avid nodal N2 disease, or nodes that are 15 millimetres at least, a more systematic staging of the mediastinum is optimal, looking at bilateral level 4 and level 7. So that brings you into the study. You need to have a PET, an MRI brain, and you have a baseline ctDNA. This is an excellent study as it looks at ctDNA across the continuum. However, that's a post hoc assessment. You can decide platinum doublet dealer's choice. You can have 3 or 4 cycles, as that's another open design to this trial with durva pre-op. So you actually, at surgery, is the time point where you are then randomised, as actually the primary outcome is looking at event-free survival in those who don't have a PCR. However, if you do have a PCR, you can still be randomised. The trial is stratified by, as I said, PCR status, by the histology as we'd expect, by the stage and by the PD-L1 cut points, and you have to have a PD-L1 accessible prior to coming on to the study. You continue in the randomised arm to durvalumab monthly for a year thereafter. So that's our schema. And then finally, we're doing competitively well. We're the second largest recruiters with Switzerland. So we're hoping to become the lead. Look out, Solange. But so here are our sites open. 9 out of 10 are actively recruiting. And we've got a few more, of course. It's a large study, of course, 520 patients. So we probably hope to get on our bike over the next year. So that was ADOPT in short. Any questions or feedback on the study?
Could you maybe give us a clue about some of the challenges with recruitment to ADOPT and ways we can circumvent that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'll start and then please come to the mic. But I guess, well, I'm in 2 quite busy surgical sites, and this year we've been really light on for neoadjuvant patients. We've got a lot of stage 1s, but that's my honest experience. I do think that a lot of these patients are coming through regional sites, and, you know, we have a restricted budget. We have a limited number of sites, 10 that we could open, so we try to go to the heavier surgical centres. It would have been nice if perhaps there was an avenue to be in a regional site to come onto the study, of course, and perhaps have central support from a metro site. That's an aspiration we share, but that's been something for me. Of course, they need to be discussed in the MDT, so I guess we're probably not capturing some individuals that go straight for upfront surgery. That's still, I think, an Australian focus.
Yeah. And it's open label, right? So people know if they're on the observation arm.
They do, so that requires
pragmatic.
us giving them the honest information that we don't know. This is an unmet, need question. But you're right, everybody wants more immunotherapy post-op, when they know it's a potential.
But yeah, a really important question, and there's no other study that that I'm aware of that's looking at this. And currently we have access to neoadjuvant Nivo plus chemo in Australia, but then nothing after that. Yeah. So this is one way of actually accessing, further treatment.
Michael's just here. Michael, you always come up when I'm talking.
I was going to ask the previous speaker a question too, but I forgot. So, Mel, this is a great study, obviously, and it's a really, really important question. And we're really in an opportunity time here where we don't have access to, immediate immunotherapy post-surgery. But if that changes, do you think this study will flounder?
Well, I can't, from the current industry landscape, people in the room correct me if I'm wrong, see it changing. So we talked earlier about Pembro perhaps being available again for advanced. 77T has closed the Nivo post-operative access program. I'm not hearing out and about that it's going to become available. So I think we still are in the window of opportunity. And I think we would also obviously champion going on to the trial. And like we've heard earlier, we can't keep dealing with anecdotes and cross-trial comparisons, but always that will affect recruitment if it becomes available, peri-op immunotherapy.
You mentioned 19 out of 40, I think, planned Australian patients. Why 40? Is that just because shouldn't we be able to accrue more than 40?
Yeah, good question. I wasn't involved in our capping, but I am certain we'll be allowed to recruit more if we find ourselves in that opportunity. I didn't put up the number of countries that are recruiting, which is, as you could imagine, a dozen or so. So I guess it's the lay of the land. But we were probably, Australians are always cautious in our estimates, apart from Ken O'Byrne. So we tend to be a little bit, let's under-promise and over-deliver. Ben.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right, Mel. I think this was sort of the first ETOP were cautious about going outside Europe, and we certainly didn't want to overpromise. But I think if we're getting into the situation where we're approaching 40 and looking like going above, I don't think there'll be an issue with. I don't think they will have an issue with us going over. And I will add to your other question, I think it truly remains an area of uncertainty what to do in patients with less than a complete pathological response. So I'd hope that regardless of access, people continue to support the study.
Thanks.